Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Untangled. I am Rosie, your ADHD coach, trainer, and the host of this podcast. Today, I am joined again by Dr. Miguel, one of my favourite human beings, and we are going to untangle all things career, purpose, and meaning. We are untangling why a 9 to 5 might be soul-destroying for an ADHD brain. Also, why having many different jobs might not be a bad thing, and why quitting isn't for losers. Plus, we are bringing you back into the conversation and answering your questions in our Struggle to Strength agony arm. So if you've ever felt suffocated in the workplace or you are desperate to find that one true purpose, then this episode is for you. Here we go. We're going into another big topic today because the community's second choice of topic was ADHD in the workplace. And you have a lot to say on that, and so do I. So let's just kick it off from a science perspective. Why do you think individuals with ADHD struggle so much in the workplace? They describe it as soul destroying a lot of the time.
Well, you need to fit into a system that is not designed for ADHD brains. So down to making it into a practical thing. So for example, things that I had to deal with and many other ADHDers will have had to deal with is like punctuality. Your manager might get aggy because they think that you're late like by 10 seconds. Like I had a manager just recently who was completely on my case on everybody's case about even like a second of punctuality and actually made a fuss about it. And it was like company culture that you need to be in a meeting exactly at like 8:30. And if you were late 10 seconds, you actually were told off at the meeting that you were late. And things like that, which can be soul destroying for somebody with like, that immediately triggers your RSD. Then your head goes all over the shop because if you have to present something, then you're not concentrating on what you need to present. It could be that somebody actually just is too loud and you're in an open space and like they distract you because they take you away from hyperfocus, like, co-working, shared spaces, that can be a big thing. It could be that you cannot maintain focus for that amount of time and then you're expected to be there 9 to 5 giving your best, and perhaps the best hours for you are 7 in the morning to 10 in the morning, and then your brain kind of like slows down and then gets back into gear like at 7 o'clock at night. But the way that you're working doesn't actually allow for you to have that flexibility. So there's so many different explanations that basically we are not made to work in an office or at the computer or whatever context for all those hours. And particularly with ADHD brains that seek novelty, and we get bored easily unless you're completely engrossed in that task that you are running at that particular time. It gets quite difficult to maintain that attention. And also it's about the capacity of any ADHD at any given time. You could have a lot of capacity for a while, and then people put you on a pedestal because they think, oh my God, Miguel is so creative and he comes up with like really cool ideas and blah, 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 because I had a really good month. And then I have a really crappy month because I'm not supposed to be. Another thing that people say, ADHDers, we are all so creative. Well, we are humans. We can have a super creative month. We can have a really not creative month at all. So, but people get this idea that maybe because we have ADHD, we are supposed to be the creative employee, and then you disappoint people because you're not creative enough. You see, so there's all of these kind of things that just they'll snowball into a massive big problem for a lot of people. I couldn't do 9 to 5.
No. Do you know what as well? And I think it's even in my case, it's like the opposite as well. When I've probably gone for jobs that need people that are more attention to detail, can sit down all day, like EA jobs. When you can't be that all the time, because obviously it's a lot of masking, I feel like that's become a big issue. And I think, again, it goes back to like what I was talking about before in other episodes, is like we need to get from the get-go, like when we're choosing these careers and what we're going to do, like really have, and again, an acceptance and understanding and awareness of how best we work. I think when you said about getting your second wind at the end of the day, most people I know of ADHD either work well really early in the morning, me being one of them, and then majority later in the night. And I think that's because it's a lot quieter. Is that something? I feel like the world's less busy and we feel like we can focus more.
Well, there are such things as chronotypes, which is basically what kind of person are you? Are you a kind of like lark and like work best in the morning, or are you an owl and are you at your desk at night? So are you more morning person or are you more nocturnal? And there is such a thing as ADHD as having more of a nocturnal chronotype, down to when we start producing melatonin, which is delayed. And there's loads of studies done on people with ADHD actually starting to wind down to how the brain chemistry changes during the day, later in the day. So there's a delayed production of melatonin for ADHDers compared to
That's so
neurotypical people. I should also say, before we get into all of these things, that a big caveat, I'm definitely not judging anybody for actually sticking to a career that is 9 to 5. So I don't want anybody listening to feel that we're making it all about being creative and jumping from one job to another, and to make people who work on a 9 to 5 job quite happily throughout their lives to feel that they are less. Because I've also got plenty of people that I know who work in more kind of like typical 9 to 5 jobs who have got ADHD, and they're quite happy because they have the security of like the fixed income that they get every month. And so there's many things to consider as well as about being creative in how you approach your career. And freedom can be exciting, but also the security and the safety of a job that gives you the same amount of money every month is not to be sneezed at.
No.
So,
well, do you know what? I'm glad that you said that, because I think, when you go into working for yourself with ADHD, that comes with a whole load of other struggles as well.
Because you don't really know what you're getting, and you're getting like, sweet bugger all one month, and then you get like, thousands the next month because you got a gig that is quite profitable, and you need to get quite used to that. Like, for example, when I met my other half, and it goes back like 18 years now, like he was in a stable job, like stable, institution, like always knew exactly how much money he was getting at the end of the month. I had been in like scientific publishing research for a while, and I left that behind because I wanted to jump into the, that was probably me being ADHD and like more adventurous, and I had other instances of doing that at previous times in my life, but that was like a big jump into the void. And I had a spell that was very successful, but then another spell that I was trying to reinvent myself, as we do, because we get bored and, I want to do nutrition, but I want to do nutrition more based on the brain. So I went to the States and I did some training, and, and I spent loads of money, and then I did a master's degree and I spent even more money, and had to cut down on how much work I was doing to invest time in doing all the lab work that came with the neuroscience and becoming a neuroscientist. But at the same time, I was getting so much less in my bank account, and that was a shock to the system. So there's all of these things to take into account. And so I don't want to idealize or glamorize this kind of, an entrepreneur or a solopreneur is the gold standard for ADHDers, because we are unique in our own selves. And I think it's good to have a spectrum of different possibilities. But what we do find is that people tend to change jobs a lot.
Yeah.
And a bit of a giveaway is somebody with a CV with 10 different jobs.
Yes,
it could be in the same kind of flavor, so 10 different companies around doing the same thing. It could be 10 completely different things.
Yeah, I think it's so important to, when I'm coaching someone, obviously I did do the big jump, but I think I'm always very cautious about them doing that, because we're known for black and white thinking, right? And actually, can you just get curious, make it a hobby first, or one day a week less in your current job, or trying to get an ADHD to do that is quite hard and difficult. But it's really important, because if that foundation goes, like you say, all of a sudden you're not earning every month, that's not going to bring out the best in you either. And also, you don't actually realize that when you do that, you end up being everything. Like running your own business, you're not just doing the creative stuff. You become everything at first. And that can be quite stressful, can't it?
Yeah, and I think we put ourselves in vulnerable positions just because of the novelty seeking, and it's a risk, basically, to engage in those kind of behaviors, because you don't really know what you're getting into, but then it's exciting, and that gives you the dopamine that you need. So it's kind of like trying to balance that. As a bit of a personal story, when I was 17, I had been doing a bit of go-go dancing. I know that you like that.
I love that story.
Personal story. So basically, I was kind of dancing in hot pants in clubs and getting paid for it and having a wild time.
Of course he was.
And then my friend said, let's go to Benidorm, of all places, and be there for the season and get a job as go-go dancers. And we got there 2 days later than everybody just got there and got the jobs. So there were no jobs. So I was homeless in Benidorm for a week. Like literally my friend was like stealing food from the supermarket. I was eating just crisps for a week and sleeping rough and like in people's places that I was hooking up with and stuff like that, just like to survive.
And that weren't what you was expecting, was it?
No, no. So from that to being like a neuroscientist, you know, if people think, oh, he's made it, he's like in a stable relationship and he's a neuroscientist, I've gone through a lot of like different things. And from that to like leaving my job in the 90s in a Japanese company where it was super quiet, my boss was like completely getting on my tits because she was like very controlling and like very petty. So basically, I told her to stuff it, like, you know, in other words that are unpublishable
I'm
for
out.
a
Getting
podcast.
out of here.
Yeah, and I shouted at her basically, like, quite rudely in front of the whole office. And, like, you could just see the Japanese people were just going, what the hell? And, like, you know, it was just hilarious.
Did the mask come off?
Oh, yeah, the mask came off, like, big time. And, like, you could hear it fall on the floor because there was just, like, silence in the office. And, like, the British people who I kind of, I hooked up with, there was this black girl who was completely hilarious. That I really, really liked at the time. And we had a lot of banter. And she was just like completely giggling at the fact that I just like stood up to my boss and I told her to stuff it. And about the Japanese people were just shocked. And then I had like different variations of that throughout my career that I just got bored. I just didn't like the feeling of somebody like telling me off. It goes back to like trauma responses as well and how you react to people like micromanaging you or being told that you're late all the time or...
Well, it's that demand avoidance, isn't it? And that's why I think it's not so much that because people say, oh, we're more likely to be entrepreneurs or work for ourselves. But I actually think, like you say, there's a lot of benefits being in the workplace. If this is why it's really important for the workplace to start catering for ADHD, autism, because actually, if it becomes just a little bit more accessible for us, you can get the best out of us. We probably wouldn't see us jumping into these situations because not all of us do want to work for ourselves.
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of fake flexibility. So again, just taking it back to our personal story and, one of my last jobs, in fact, my last kind of like, paid 9-to-5 gig where there was all of these. Yes, of course, you can work whatever hours, but it wasn't whatever hours because I was expected to do meetings at particular times of the day and then kind of like and be available at whatever other times of the day to do certain things. So it was pretty much a 9-to-5 with an illusion that it was completely flexible.
Yeah, flexible on request.
Exactly. And then that is disappointing. So I think the flexibility, when there is true flexibility, and of course, if there is a meeting at 10 o'clock and you need to attend, you need to attend. So you cannot just be, oh, can you change it to whatever time suits me because I'm autistic or I've got ADHD. So there needs to be a bit of like give and take. But it's about companies actually meaning what they say as opposed to just want to like tick the box of...
Yeah, well, just not just awareness, it's action. It's like... awareness is step one, but are you actually acting on the awareness? Because they all want to book a company talk, but what are you doing with that information?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's the difference. You can tell the companies that are actually just at the awareness stage and not actually taking real action. Sorry to interrupt, but if you've ever felt called to make a real difference, this just might be it. I'm Rosie, an ADHD coach, and together with everyone's favourite neuroscientist, Dr. Miguel, we have created a certified ADHD coach training. This is not just another training or course. This is a living curriculum built from science, movement, and lived experience. You'll learn how to coach ADHD clients with confidence, create meaningful change, and build a career that truly reflects who you are. Doors are now open and head to untangledco.com to join the movement. Let's get untangled. But I think it comes down to trust, building trust between each other and knowing, like, for people to really get the understanding that we can do in 4 hours when we're in flow, we can do a bloody 2 days work, but then we might need a few days to recover from that hyperfocus. And I think that's what it's really difficult for someone who hasn't got ADHD to really understand, because it can look like inconsistency, but actually they always say, like, as much how hard you work, we should be resting just as much. And with ADHD, we don't often give ourselves that grace. And I think that's where we can burn out.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's all of these unrealistic expectations of, like for me in the last couple of jobs, so I think in one of them, I hadn't actually been diagnosed yet. And then there was this idea that, of course, like Miguel is creative because, I think that's been with me for a long time. I'm kind of like quite arty, creative, think out of the box kind of person anyway. But in my last job, when I was actually diagnosed, and it was one of the first things that I communicated, because I was told, well, on the first day, I think I was telling you this before, I was making myself a cup of tea at like 8:32 when the meeting started at 8:30, on the basis that in most jobs that I had before, that was fine, because people were, the first few minutes, you don't talk about anything. It's just, hello, how are you today, blah, blah. And you start at 8:35 and it was more chilled.
Yeah.
But, in this particular job, it was kind of like, it was completely strict. I was told off, and I was basically told on the first day, we start as the BBC clock goes like, so
What's
I
the
had to be
BBC
there.
clock compared to, what does that even mean?
Basically, just you need to be there exactly at 8:30 and not 8:30 after 1 second.
Well, I go by the ADHD clock.
Well, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So there is that. And so I was told publicly, I was told off publicly in front of like the team. That is kind of like not good practice anyway, by somebody who, portrayed themselves to be, very flexible and like accommodating of like neurodivergence and everything else. And then I was told the next day as well that, within that week, that because my personality was quite bubbly and I brought a lot of energy into the room, that because of that, to tone myself down a bit, because the rest of the team were not as,
How dare they?
as exactly as like exciting or, whatever, they were quieter. So they might feel intimidated by me or feel that I'm stealing their thunder. And I'm thinking,
That's such
it's
a...
the worst thing to say to somebody who just
is.
brings, I'm like enthusiastic, I'm bringing all my passion for what I'm doing into the job. It's my first
It's like
week.
wanting to bring down, what they say, like, dim your light. Like, it's that typical story, isn't it? Of like wanting
Completely.
to keep you...
And it happened to me, it's
That's
not
so
like
horrible.
you're just starting. It happens to me as a, like mature person in a mature job of a senior capacity. I'm being told to tone myself down. And kind of like, I should have seen the red flags already that first week, because it didn't end well when I got my autistic diagnosis as well. I was told, oh, are you sure you're autistic? Because ADHD, yes, I can see that because you're very creative. Okay, well, that big kind of like thing that not everybody is going to be super creative when we are ADHDers, or at least in an overt way, that we're not all going to be super arty. We may be creative in how we cook, or in how we manage relationships or something, or how we draw, but not necessarily
And
in
creative
all
can mean
aspects of
so
life.
many different things, can't it?
Exactly. But then the autistic thing, you must be very high functioning, because otherwise I cannot see you as being autistic.
Oh my God,
And
get out of there now. I'm
I
like,
know,
no.
and I'm thinking, so I
They
don't
need
want
some
to
training.
make it all about me, but there's just some examples that might resonate with people, like, some red flags that, and I'm thinking, should we just be looking for that one passion, you think, in jobs? Should we just be looking to focus everything in that one passion that drives us, so we become these very passionate entrepreneurs, do you think?
I think it's a dangerous game, actually. Like, and I wrote something on this a while back, and I think purpose as a single thing can cause a lot of pain. And I think for a long time I was painfully chasing purpose. Like, you'd hear all these podcasts and read all these books, like, you have to find your purpose. And I literally spent so much time being distracted by, oh, is this yoga teaching my purpose? Is me doing artist liaison for events got to be my purpose? And then when it wasn't working out, like, oh my God, this wasn't my purpose. What is my purpose? But actually, I think your purpose is more about, you can have more than one purpose, and it's about finding meaning in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's what I think I've come to realise is whatever I'm connecting with in that moment, whether it can be a hobby, it doesn't even have to be my work. It can be something that I'm doing alongside my work. It could be in my relationships. You can have purpose in so many different areas of your life, and also in different careers. You can have multiple careers at different time or at the same time, as we know.
Yeah, and it's valid. It's valid. Like, as you know, I trained to be a yoga teacher as well, like many, many years ago. And that was going to be, I was going to leave my then corporate job to become a yoga teacher. I was going to move to Spain and build a yoga retreat center where we were going to do all kind of like all holistic things and blah, 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 overlooking the sea. And like, I had all my fantasy built. And then suddenly I just got a new job and I thought, oh, so the
Your vision
yoga.
board.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I do think they all connect the dots in some way. Like, I don't regret any of the careers that I've
No, me
had.
neither.
And at the time, I felt a lot of shame about it. Like, my dad would go, oh God, you always give up on things like all your trainings and all your jobs. They've all brought me to where I am today, and I'm really glad about that. And I think at the moment, the way the world is, right, like we've got this, AI coming in, there's a lot of fear around careers and stuff like that. I think it's a great time for us as ADHDers, if we've job hopped, we've done lots of trainings, because we can actually tap into a lot of these different skills that we've learned, different networks that we've built.
And we are adaptable by nature. We were talking about that in the last episode as well, how we adapt, because we need to adapt, because, we have endured difficult situations before. We've been told we are not good enough. So then we basically come up with a coping mechanism to allow us to do better in other aspects. So we're not always told that we are the worst performer in class or whatever it is, or, the slowest, or the one that turns up the latest or whatever. So you come up with different aspects, whether it's humor, flexibility, availability, doing things that nobody else wants to do. Creativity can be another way to stand out from the crowd as well. So it's not that you're not innately creative, it's in you, but you surface it and you manifest it in ways that other people may not, because they don't feel they need to make up for any lacks that they might feel they have, because they may feel enough on a more regular basis.
Yeah, and I think if you look at technology, maths, that can all be creative. It just doesn't look very externalized, does it? Creativity can come in so many different ways, like pattern recognition.
Yeah, in a way, it's related to purpose, and it's related to making the brain feel safe and connected with how you want to express yourself, because self-expression, whether it's through clothing or through cooking or through how you speak or through your relationships or your work or whatever else, is part of how your brain is making an effort to let the rest of your body feel safe and connected with the world, because we are social animals. We are supposed to be here doing things that may be thankless. We don't need to be recognized for on a regular basis by people that we know. It's about legacy and about future generations and leaving things behind us that we're not going to experience. And there's a selfless part of the brain that is linked to safety and to kindness and to self-kindness. There are many different anatomical parts in the brain that relate to that. I'm thinking of the insula, for example, in the brain, that is related to kindness and self-kindness and compassion. And they're all kind of very much entwined with this sense of purpose, because purpose is not just selfish. It's not about just making myself happy. It's about making myself happy in a situated kind of way. I cannot just make myself happy in isolation. I'm making myself happy in a situation. I'm making myself happy by being here with you today, with Sharifa and with the rest of the team, and in a lovely place doing this podcast. And you see, there's a context to that purpose. And I think that's important to remember, that we have that connectedness and we thrive in that connectedness, and acknowledging that the sense of community, whether it's, it doesn't have to be a massive community, it could be a tiny community, but the bonding with people who are like-minded is really important. And I think there's even an element of spirituality that I think it's important to tap into. Is there some kind of spirituality network in your work, whether it's your office or the community that you work with, or are you tapping into similar things that make you feel connected with the world? And I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about, do you work with colleagues who enjoy being in nature, for example, together? And do you go for a walk at lunchtime? Or, do you share similar experiences that replenish you outside of your work? Because you were talking about rest and how important it is to rest. So that kind of thing. What do you think?
Very rarely do I meet an ADHD that isn't in some kind of service role. I think that's what meaning, I think that's what meaning is to us, and purpose. I think we struggle to stay motivated in most things because there is no meaning. And I think meaning to us means it has to be more than us. It has to mean more than just about us. It has to support others in some way or serve others in some way. I think that's just how we're wired, in my opinion. That's just what in my life and when I've seen that in the coaching aspect. And I think when I look back at my career as like an EA, it was great in the beginning because I was still serving someone do their job. But eventually that wasn't enough because it was for like a brand that just was, it was about sales or whatever it was. When I did yoga, it was the first time that I felt like I was doing something that went way beyond myself. And actually, again, it brought in spirituality, and it was about, a higher purpose as well, and made me connect with the world in a whole different way. And I think that's why this is the longest job I've ever had, is ADHD Untangled, because not only does it play to my strengths in terms of the work I do day to day, but I'm always it's always not about me. It's beyond me. It's about other people, and, not letting them down, but also wanting to do what it is I'm doing because it's really important to me. And that's what motivates me on the days that I'm shattered, or, I'll want to have a day off and I know I've got clients and I'm like, I will never not show up for them. And I think that's where you find an ADHD find consistency. They say we haven't got consistency, but I think in the right purpose and meaning.
I think you need to be motivated, because if you are motivated and you are interested in what you do, then you have all the time of the world for it. But we're very kind of like all or nothing. And if we are not motivated enough, then we're just going to basically go to the other. We're just going to lose interest, basically. If we are not motivated enough by what we are doing, we're just going to leave it. And I think in a way that is good that we are like that, because we feel the intensity of that cue that the time has come to move on. And that can be a radical move. And that's why people have like complete radical changes in careers and so on. But I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's valid to actually move from a job to another, even if it's like very, very different, because it's a kind of like evolution in a way.
Yeah,
so,
I think it's definitely changing as well. Like in the world, I think it's now being celebrated more than it ever has. Is it to be, be able to do more than one thing?
So in your coaching career, what do you think is the most frequent source of frustration for your clients?
I think there's two big frustrations. Number one, what I mentioned earlier, so like the finding purpose and meaning, or they want to find a more meaningful career. Like, I think that's probably become my niche accidentally, is people coming to me because they want to find a career that means something to them, and they use the awareness of their ADHD as a vehicle to change that, which I love to see. And it happens so much with my clients. They end up finding these things that they really are excited about and they want to do. As I said, it ends up being along the lines of a service role. Otherwise, the other biggest struggle is RSD in the workplace. It's huge, absolutely huge. Like, everyone that's in a 9-to-5 kind of job will come to me because they're struggling with RSD in the workplace, or the workplace will send them for coaching. Because the way the workplace see it, without the understanding, a lot of the times the clients come in and don't even know it's RSD, that's what's happening. But they will just see, like, this person's really good at their job, but their reactions, they overreact to these things, and it's becoming a bit of a problem. So when they both become aware that RSD is an actual rejection sensitive dysphoria, in case anyone hasn't heard of it, is something that is connected to ADHD, it blows their mind, especially for the client. And I've had such great, when they're in a company that is willing to really take the coaching seriously, like it's not just a tick the box exercise, and the client takes on the awareness and uses it as an explanation, it can really help. It doesn't mean RSD goes away, but they can navigate those situations with a bit more pause, create a bit more space, and the others aren't left thinking, what the hell is going on? And usually that actually comes down, a lot of the time, the RSD is happening a lot more frequently, because what I see with clients is they're usually quite burnt out and they're trying to work in a neurotypical way.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so how the hell, because how many trainings and degrees have you done? Did you say God. 7?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
So most people with ADHD will look like, especially me, like I'm like, oh my God. So how the hell did you do that many degrees with ADHD, do you think? How did you navigate that?
Well, I think it's kind of a hyper fixation of mine, like learning, and I enjoy I don't know whether it's the ADHD and the hyperfocus that comes with it, or the ADHD mixed with autism as well. And I like detail and like getting lost in a lot of detail, and but it's whatever it is, I find academia quite satisfying. Like, I would like to I was looking last year at doing a master's in psychology because I think neuroscience and psychology can be quite interesting mixed
Why not
together.
have both?
Yeah. So and then my husband was saying, "There's no way you're going back to university because then I."
But why does he say that? What
Well,
happens
because
to you
then
when you're doing
what
it?
happens is that I go I got neck deep into my training, and then I just basically ignore him more. I go more
You're
drama,
hyper-focusing.
and I think as I'm aging, I get better because I think I soften a little bit. But I had a couple of my masters in neuroscience was like a complete drama. It was all in person. There was no online at all. I had to travel 2 hours there and 2 hours back because of the distance of the university. I had to give up so much work to do that.
Wow.
Basically, I was almost like studying, even if I did it in 18 months. So I had to give up practically, 70% of my work to study, and there was a lot of drama involved. I wasn't diagnosed. I was being, I was told by the university things like, my best work was like 85% in an essay. I submitted it 2 hours late, and I was told, sorry, your mark is going to be capped at 50% because you were late.
What?
I know.
No.
And there was no, and I went back years later and I explained, look, is there a way that I missed my merit?
Oh,
I missed my distinction
God.
by 1% or something. And I was quite pissed off. And I went back to the university and I said, is there a way that we can work this out? Because now I have a diagnosis and I know it was because of my ADHD and blah, blah, blah. And like the professor that she just took it personally and so there was a lot of drama involved. It was a very difficult time in my life with loads of different things going on in my life. And I think he's got that kind of like memory of me being dramatic and there was a lot of, emotion involved. So he doesn't have a
He's
really
like,
good
no,
memory. Exactly. Not again. Yeah. And I think having the discipline of studying different modules and everything, when you do a master's and you have to like bring in 7 different subjects under one umbrella, it can be quite good for your dopamine. It's like, a bit of like everything. So it can tap into your novelty and so on. So that's great. And I would like to ask you, because I know that you also have the situation of autism and ADHD together. So how do you structure your work life around being autistic and having ADHD?
Well, I think I'm still untangling it because obviously the autism is quite new for me. I'm learning a lot from you, though. You keep saying you're doing too much. I think what I'm trying to do now is create a little bit of space, knowing that ADHD will want to do everything in a short space of time because it wants the stimulation. But now learning about my autism, I'm trying now with the next projects for the next year is to create enough space. I know my autism likes the routine and to have space to create things. So I think a lot to do with my scheduling, actually. Is the big thing that I'm navigating. And it takes time. And I think actually the way that I do it and the way that I've done it so far is to be okay with doing it, failing, making the mistake and learning from it.
Yeah.
I think when I don't, which I have done over the years without the awareness of my ADHD and autism, I was burning out all the time thinking, well, why are you burnt? Like, why is this happening to me? I'm useless. I can't do this job. Now I know I can make changes and I won't continue to keep doing the same cycles over and over again. So I think it's just learning as you go along, because I don't know about you, but I haven't come from a family that's ever run their own business like I have or done any of the work that I've done. So there is no manual. It's just learning as I do it and then untangling these diagnoses at the same time. But I think it's a real privilege to be able to have support. But also the biggest change over the last month has actually been getting someone who is really good at the stuff that I'm bad at. And it's just a couple of hours a week, but the tech stuff, things like that I know will drain me, playing to someone else's strengths and sacrificing something else in my life to have that is crucial to me being able to continue, I think. But that does come at being in a situation where you can, or in a country where you've got access to work or something. But it has been one of the hardest things. I haven't had children, but this feels like having a child, something that I feel like I can't have a day away from, or something that I have to constantly think about. So it's definitely been all the struggles and all the strengths at the same time.
And what you're telling me is it boils down to, again, that self-awareness that I think for me was a similar story in terms of like the ADHD is like go non-stop. And then you burn out basically. And then I think the autism diagnosis is kind of the learnings for me have sunk in at a more slower pace. And it's like every day I discover something new. Whereas with ADHD, it's almost like made sense immediately. When I was told that I had ADHD, I thought, okay, well, I can understand that. You know, I made sense of that more easily. The autism, I kind of like I had like this major
Did you reject
imposter
it?
syndrome.
Yeah.
I was thinking, no way. I kind of like, yes, but no, I'm not autistic enough, or, you know.
Yeah.
And then, yes, of course I am. And it's a big spectrum. But at the same time, it's just taken me years to realize my need of space, my need of rest,
and honouring it. I think having the grace, like, and this is why, like, you know, you said the imposter syndrome. I really rejected my autism diagnosis as well at the beginning and just ignored it. And I think actually I can see. I'm not saying I'm at that place right now, but I can see how the two are going to really complement each other, especially in the workplace.
Yeah.
If we use the awareness and actually take action.
Exactly.
You know,
yeah,
and I think that's what's important.
Yeah, because I think some of it is like about the structure, some of it is about the more creative kind of like chaos and being at ease with the chaos.
Yeah.
And combining the two, I think it's a big strength. So
yeah, the autism can actually ground you a lot, so you can do those fun things with a lot more intention, I think.
Exactly.
And awareness. So far, we have spoken about why the 9 to 5 feels so soul destroying, why job hopping isn't such a bad thing, and the struggles and strengths that come from working for yourself as an ADHDer. If you are now realising that you might not be the problem and maybe it's the system, then you're absolutely right. Coming up is my favourite part of the episode. It's answering your questions about ADHD in the workplace. Let's get untangled.
I've got a question for yourself, Dr. Miguel, around a sense of injustice and coping with that in the workplace. On a daily basis, an ADHDer, I will feel sense of injustice or something not being right, or it could be something happening in the outside world, on the news, and it deeply affects you in that moment and can really affect your mood at work. As an example, I'm really good at giving people advice when they're struggling with those emotions, such as taking a moment to breathe. And also, what is causing that sense of injustice?
So justice sensitivity in the workplace, great question. And what to do? I think there's so much strength to come from justice sensitivity. This is basically what I was talking about, the biggest struggle. Like I said RSD, but also this is part of RSD, isn't it? Like a reaction to justice sensitivity can be like quite a big emotional outburst. And I know I sound like a broken record, but again, nervous system regulation when you're going into those environments, but also you have that. This is where I think the explanation, yes, us doing what we can to regulate our nervous system, but this is where the workplace really need to maybe step up in some ways and understand ADHD and difference, and know what's going on and be fair in the way that they're approaching someone that has ADHD in the workplace. I think and it does come down to the question of, is this, and I want to caveat this, not saying quit your job overnight, but like maybe it isn't a value match for your
maybe there's a red flag in there.
A red flag,
if red flags accumulate, then that is the time to go. And in my particular case with this person I was talking about kept sharing very indiscreet comments about other members of staff that were actually quite demeaning of them.
Well, there you go. It's a breach of your values. And I think this is a lot of the work, isn't it? Understanding when you've got ADHD and this is happening.
Yeah.
What are your values and what are you willing to work with and not?
Yeah, so sometimes it's a negotiation with yourself. Am I happy to have this kind of like little compromise? And, am I going to like let it go? For me, it was like part of like the straw that broke the camel's back, because I'm thinking, this person has got a habit of being quite vicious gossip about other members of staff. What is she saying about me?
Yeah, exactly.
When I'm not in the room, when I know that she's calling me out for like being 10 seconds late and things like that. So I'm just thinking, okay, when I had like, other things that it's going to get too personal. But I think at the end of the day, you need to make a judgment as to, would it be better for you, for your own mental well-being, to leave that particular job?
Yeah. And and I've had similar things where they are actually managing people out. And as an EA, you used to see a lot of stuff, right, behind closed doors. And that was the same thing, that justice sensitivity, like wanting to open your mouth and say something and then putting yourself at risk. But actually, I don't regret it one bit, because it's not an environment I wanted to be in. So I suppose it is asking those questions, but also being able to communicate those injustices to a workplace and see what their reactions are, I suppose, as well. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And whether they basically mean their words or whether they are just being tokenistic
Yeah, because
about
sometimes
it.
they might not be aware of it.
Yeah, and in terms of the medical element of it, the actual explanation, I think there's not an anatomical part of the brain that I can say it is because of this or because of that, and that's thicker in ADHD brains than in non-ADHD brains. I think it boils down to evolutionary medicine and biology and how potentially some theories around how people with ADHD may have actually been protectors of tribes and in charge of discovering
So
resources.
interesting.
So they were there kind of like discovering a new route to keep the tribe safe to pass from one area to another without fighting with another tribe. So they were kind of like creative at the same time in charge of safety and protection of the group. And so you have an intense awareness of a potential threat. So you keep yourself safe, but also other people around you safe. And we are caring people. So you were talking about how you meet so many people who are in caring professions.
I was going to say that connects the dots there, doesn't it?
Yeah,
That's so
exactly.
interesting. I never knew this.
So we care about people. We are selfless when we are committed with a cause. So many people working in like charitable organizations and thinking outside the box and just being selfless generally. And it makes sense to think that maybe, 200,000 years ago, if we were like aiming for the best of the tribe, then and to keep them safe and happy, that's what we would have done. So we try and do the same for us and for other people, because when we feel that something is it's not just about us. If we feel that there is racism or ableism or homophobia or transphobia or whatever else in the workplace, it's not just about us, it's about the community that we feel connected with.
We can tend to do it for others more than ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why we need each other.
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Dr. Miguel. I never knew that. I've learned something new, as always. I think I counted how many jobs I had in 10 years. I think it was 8 jobs in the corporate world in about 10 years. How many did you have?
Well, my academic career, so I didn't know what to study when I was a teenager, and I bumped around the last year of my A-levels, and then I didn't make enough grades to have a career in medicine, and I have a needle phobia anyway. So I went and I did a year in philosophy, which I think I went to 3 classes because I was basically just like, partying every night. And
shows
and
you
then
weren't
I thought,
interested.
I'll do business. And then, you know what? I'll do sustainability. Oh, no, I'll move to the UK and do more business. Oh, I'll study environmental science because I think that's really cool. And social justice and all of that kind of thing. And I did a master's in that. And then I thought, I'm training to be a yoga teacher. Oh, through yoga, I learned about Ayurveda. Oh, Ayurveda is linked with nutrition. I'm going to do nutrition. Oh, I like the brain. I'm going to do neuroscience. Oh, I like...
Yeah, but all of that has played a part. That's what I love, though. Everything you've said, actually...
It's a journey that's made me who I am, and it's my own journey that's made me unique. And I think if you embrace the fact that, everybody's got their own journey that's going to make them unique in their own right. And it doesn't need to mimic anybody else's journey.
No.
And it can be through your career, through your relationships, through your academic training, but it just makes you who you are, and I think we need to embrace it.
Oh, definitely. And this is why I say quitting isn't for losers. I always say, actually, I think, staying in something because you think it's the right thing to do is actually a life for the mundane, isn't it? Like, the more you can move around and have those different revisions, you're going to create that vision that you want.
Yeah.
And that's why I think work experience is so valuable. Like, in school, like, spend more time getting people out in the workplace and actually experiencing it and failing.
I still write a book at one point, from go-go dancer to neuroscientist.
Please do. Please do. So let's go. What's one thing you wish you'd known earlier about ADHD and career? One thing.
That I can be me without hiding behind a persona that try and fit in or try to people please by looking a particular way or behaving in a particular way, because that's the way that I felt that particular job culture wanted me to be like. And I can just wear what I want. I can say what I want within limits. You cannot just but like you can just genuinely be you as a person, as opposed to just wear this mask and this costume to turn up at work because that's what you're expected to do.
Yeah. I think my one thing would be the quitting thing, is to know that's actually part of it.
Yeah.
That's not the end. Like, we were saying about it was the end of the world. I used to literally think it was the end of the world. Like, that had fucked with my mental health. and there was some dark moments from like losing jobs or leaving jobs, the one thing I wish I knew is that quitting is part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you, everyone who has listened. We hope that has been so useful for you, and we hope you go out there and find your meaningful careers, whatever that means. And until next time.
Yes.
Thanks, Dr. Miguel.
Until the next one.
Let's bring it all together. Here are a few things. Maybe it isn't you, and maybe it is the system. Quitting isn't for losers, and you can find a more meaningful and fulfilling career with ADHD. Thank you so much for joining me on this ADHD Untangled episode. If this resonated with you, then please share it with someone who needs to hear it and save it for when you need the guidance. You can access all the resources and where to find us in our show notes. Please don't forget to follow Dr. Miguel and ADHD_Untangled on Instagram. Remember, you're not failing. The system wasn't built for us, and you can find a career that feels meaningful to you. Lots of love and strength, Rosie.